is Penny Day. I'm the Executive Director of the Rural Communities Foundation. And hi, and we wanted to check in just to see. I know some of you haven't started your project or are still in waiting for it to start. Some of you have finished. So I just thought we could go around, have a chat about where you are with your project, how everything is going, and maybe there's some cross-pollination that takes place between you folks. Just great to check in. Some of you have done this before in our midterm check-in, just to find out how everything's going. And we will be sending out a Google form, which you can fill out and perhaps upload some pictures or anything like that that we might be able to use in our annual report, and you can use as well. Look, who's that in the background? So sweet. Very quiet.
There we go.
This is Lena and Nona. Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Great.
So if you're able to turn your cameras on, it would be great because then we can see everybody. But why don't we start by going around the room and perhaps people can just update where you are and how things are going. And I'm just going to go by my list here. So Eric, why don't you start with Two Beans and give us a little update on how things are going.
Okay.
Hi, we're actually Earthling Farm and Food Forest now.
Okay, Earthling Farm.
We changed our name. Yeah, we changed our name this year.
Okay, great.
Our project has been the new project has been kind of put to a halt, but we did our dig in June, and we did get a downpour of rain, so we witnessed that the trenches and the new pond are filling and working. However, they're not holding water, and because we didn't have water, we haven't been able to install a pump. So we're waiting for water, and we thought it would probably be best to do that in the spring when we know we're going to have consistent amount of rain, because then frost is coming very soon for us here on the mountain. But overall, the project has been really awesome, and the water addition has been really beautiful to see and witness. We wrote down some observations, some positives. We've seen tons of animals visiting. We have a resident black bear who goes right down into the new pond to fish any water that's down on the bottom. Spring ducks come, turtles come, coyotes are in there, and lots of many birds, and then our dogs and our cats and stuff too. And then
a raccoon came and wiped out like almost all our flock over like a 2-week
oh jeepers
summer.
Yeah,
that was something.
But luckily, we just keep restarting. It will be okay. And then a positive for the food forest that we started last year with the Joan Feynman grant, we have seen fruit already actually on some of the trees. So this year we did all no spray. Peaches, raspberries, pears, and nectarines have all grown. And we did herbs underneath, and we've witnessed really beautiful yields. And like nectarines had some damage, but the peaches were perfect, the best peaches we've ever had in our lives. So we hope each year we get more and more fruit to share with people in different groups. It's okay. And then I guess those are positives. And then the only negative is the climate action part of it is we are in climate change, and we're witnessing it here on the land because we are, not only does our project not have water, we really don't have water on our own land either for our vegetables. So that has been a big issue, and that's kind of changed our perspective on how we're going to work this project. We're looking into maybe doing like a pond liner versus the pumps, like what would be better for a long-term storing of water on the land. And we do eventually need to invest in a liner, but for the spring, we're going to invest in a pump and maybe some holding tanks to hold some water so that we can at least water in June and July, maybe, or July and August when it's really, really dry. I'm going to let Eric continue because I'm going to go take a step away, but thank you.
Nice seeing you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm Meg, by the way, and this is Leda.
Meg and Leda. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you folks again. So how about Eric? I know you probably hosted lots of groups on the land too. So how is that? Was that successful?
We are still planning to host more of the workshop with the food forest around mid-October when things slow down for us, and then early spring next year, perhaps during when the water comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So we
It's
can show
dangerous
that.
right now.
Oh, with the when it's empty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for if there's kids running around falling into the pit, maybe. But
Yeah, we don't want that.
Yeah, we want it to be filled with water so it's more presentable and also just more visibly available. Yeah, for people to see the project in working. Where right now, unfortunately, it is just a dry pit and a big hole in the ground. And so we're hoping to kind of shift for fall and then also for spring.
Although we did have this group from NACAC come, Northeast Kings Education Center, with an organization called Nourish, with Jessica Ross.
That's right. Yes, yes.
Brought a group of students over to do a tour, and we did do a tour with them through the food forest, and that was pretty interesting. That was lovely.
That's great.
I mean, some of the kids were interested, but I mean, I mean, the parents, the
don't know
teachers,
what fire you light until years later sometimes.
Yeah, the teachers seemed more into it.
Yeah.
What else?
I'm just going to ask the group and see if anybody here has questions for you, because we've got a few to go through, so we don't want to lose our time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So anybody have any questions for Eric at Earthling Farm on their project, or anything that you folks have been? Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Marion.
I just wanted to know if you're aware of the food forest in Fredericton.
Nope.
It just might be a good connection for you. Andrew's a great guy, very knowledgeable.
What is it called?
It's all I know it by is food forest.
Okay.
And I'll just look up food forest Fredericton.
And his name's Andrew.
And Andrew.
And it's on the land that is owned by St. Mary's Anglican Church.
Cool.
Okay.
Great. And Steph, you had a question?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find my raise hand function.
I saw your hand.
Okay, great. Do it the old-fashioned way then.
Yeah.
Along the same lines, I guess I work with a woman named Raina McDonald who does food forest work, I think in Pictou County. Her project, or the project that she's affiliated with, is called the Scottsburn Community Food Forest.
Right.
I thought do you guys know of them, or have you worked with them at all?
Not yet, no.
Okay, it might be super lovely. It might be a nice connection for you to check out.
Nice.
Great. I'll write that down too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They're in Pictou County, you said?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
In that area. That's great. So let's push on. And Crystal, you're next on my list anyway. You want to tell us how things are going with you?
Hi, it's nice to be here with everybody today. Well, do a little reminder of what we were planning to do. I can hear some other noise in the background there.
I've just muted him. Yeah.
Okay, you can hear me okay? Okay.
Yeah.
So the project that we were doing, we were doing, I guess you could call it a retreat, something like that. And we actually had the main event this week. So yesterday was the last day of it. So it's very fresh in my mind. I participated as well as helping organize it. So Sally was here with us the last time that we met, and she was one of the facilitators. So all told, there was 20 of us, including the facilitators. And we got together on Tuesday and then carried it through yesterday. And I guess you'd say the audience, the people that were invited and took part were all members of the Guestwick Conservation Collaborative. So that means that all of us are, I suppose you would say, professionals that work as conservation in the conservation area. And so we work with various government departments and NGOs, and so many of us have been involved now for years. There was a good variety of ages that showed up. We had some people that are just starting their careers and a couple of people that have actually just recently retired, but they're still involved. So these are people that have been working towards the goal of doing better for our environment for their whole lives. And so there is some of that stress that they've felt that there hasn't been enough change. You probably are all quite familiar with what I'm describing. So this event was really aimed at rejuvenating and letting us think in a slightly different way. A lot of it's very hard to say very quickly, but a lot of it really was using the teacher within and being introspective and thinking what we know ourselves and how we come to other people and what we give to them and how we are treating ourselves inside as well. So it was deep, I guess, would be a good way to put it.
A stress relieving and healing retreat for people who
Yeah,
work in the climate field.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Penny.
Yeah.
So I would say, the question that I might, if I was you, I might ask, was this necessary? Was this a worthwhile thing to do? And I can tell you, just based on what I saw when we were in our circle of trust, that yes, it was very necessary. There was, it was visual. The, the stress and the weight that people put on themselves, and you know, it was very worthwhile to do this. And the relationships and the connections that were built while we were there, I think you'll see those endure on to the future, and that's a beautiful thing to see. Myself, I knew probably about half of the people that were there beforehand, and only 2 or 3 of them quite well. And by the time we left, everybody had that in-person interaction and time to really get to know each other. And having, being in a similar field and being in a lot of ways similar type of people, it was just a beautiful place to be. And so I
Great.
thank you for the contribution to allow us to do that.
That's great. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Crystal on their project? No? That's great. Well, thank you for that. And this is the second year that this has taken place, and I think it's a very, very necessary type of project for people. As you all know, you're working in the climate field, and you know the stress that's associated. So I'm going to go next to Marian, who is reporting on the Healthy Coastline project. So go ahead.
Thank you. And so where do I begin? I guess I begin with the beginning, and that is that, this project was initiated by the Diocesan Environment Network of the Anglican Diocese of Nova Scotia, PEI, in partnership with the Anglican Parish of Port Dufferin. The whole idea was to live out what we call the fifth mark of mission. And that is to safeguard the integrity of creation and sustain and renew the Earth's life, which is a pretty big task, but we bite it off by chunk. And so one of the areas this was in conjunction with Dalhousie, one of the researchers from Dalhousie, Camilo Botero, who has done a lot of the technical work, the hands-on data collection, a lot of the training. And the idea was that we would engage the community in a way that would help people in the community be able to deal with the effects of climate change in regards to the coastline and the impact of their lives on things like Hurricane Fiona. And so the time was right because everybody was interested after such a huge impact. And so our goals were to train local people, to develop a connection, a deep connection between the people who were involved and the environment, to educate them, to empower them. And so we had a couple of aspects to it. One of them was, which is Camilo's hard scientific research, and that was to be able to measure and monitor the impact, measure train people to be able to monitor weather stations and monitor rain gauges. And so it's been a real learning curve for some of these people. And so far, we have about 10 monitoring stations along the Eastern Shore, most of them centered in the parish of Port Dufferin. But all of a sudden, we've really had an interest in other communities along the Eastern Shore too. So, for example, next Monday night, we'll be talking to people from Port Bickerton, and especially, in particular, people who are connected to the Lighthouse project there.
Right.
And so they have just used their imaginations have run wild, which is really excellent. So there's been a lot of heavy learning to this. I think for me, maybe the technical part, maybe the administrative part too. For Camilo, it's been engaging the community, building relationships with volunteers and who have become citizen scientists.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a great crowd so far. And it's going to be kind of centered on community to community, but I'm sure that there will develop overlap and relations will build as we go through this. So they have some interesting stories to talk about measuring beaches and waves and how that impacts their ability to be able to stay upright. We've also had some broader communication. We were really slow on the draw at the beginning, difficulties with communication, but we centered on that in June and brought ourselves back up to speed. There have been a few CBC interviews,
I saw
interviews and things in the local paper. And so we're trying to cover a lot of things, how to communicate with the larger community, how to communicate, with people and developing new relationships. We just this week developed new relationships with people who have a science and education background, because one of our real challenges, but it seems to be flourishing as of today, is the relationship we've developed with the school. The science teacher who teaches Oceans 11, that's the course, he, we've had a small starter too, but now all of a sudden we have people who are really willing and anxious to come in and confer with him on how best to make sure that the youth in the community are prepared to become decision makers around climate change. And so it's been really exciting this week. Yeah. Really
and
exciting.
It sounds like the project also could help with some best practices for other groups that might be, you've learned so much in that period of time on how to reach beyond maybe even your parish, but be outside into the greater community. And there's some great learnings there on best practices and community connections. So that sounds great. I don't like to cut you off because it's a great project, and I'll love to hear more about it. Does anybody have any questions for Marian? Any comments on? Because there has been some news articles about that, which I've seen. So that's great. Well, thank you for that information, Marian. And I'm going to move along to the next person on my screen, which is Susan Lorraine. And Susan, you want to tell us about your project?
Yes, I do. Hi, everyone. So we received a grant for offering micro grants. So we are trying to support, seed, incentivize community conversations around climate change and also study groups. So we have a $50 and a $200 micro grant. And that is situated within other things that we're doing, trying to learn, really, what does it take for people to feel confident to host those kinds of conversations in their community? What resources do they need? What support? And also to gather stories and share them. We have, for example, lunchtime conversations with guests who are just folks who have a story to tell, so that we can amplify examples of stories that we want more of, you could say. So we've been somewhat passive about it. We include the news in our little newsletters and anything that we're doing. And then just waiting to see what kind of uptake there would be. And it's been fairly low, but we have given away $500, and 2 of those were, one was a neighborhood barbecue talking about climate during the summer, and the other is with somebody here actually. And so, and that was an open house with Seniors for Climate around food security and what to expect around that in terms of how climate change is impacting food security. There was also somebody who's hosting weekly gatherings for parents who are concerned about the impact of what's going on in the world and in our region on their children. And so they have an ongoing conversation and study group, and they wanted to buy a particular book for all of their members around parenting during times of global crisis. And so that's what they use their fund for. And then finally, we heard from somebody in Antigonish who has been doing amazing work in the community with others. They formed a little collective to organize community workshops around emergency preparedness, and particularly making those available to people who are more vulnerable. And they also are hosting study groups around a book called Hospicing Modernity. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And so we've since been in conversation with them. They use their microgrant to host an all-day workshop at Firelock. But we want to learn more from them about what they're learning in community about emergency preparedness and what kind of invitation and how to make that be really community, grounded in community, led by community. And they're working with newcomer populations in particular. So on Tuesday, we're having a lunchtime conversation with 2 of the people involved in that, Riley Olsted and Yvonne Druin. So please tune in. I'll put the link in the chat. It's free. Come on and hear their story. So anyway, that's where we're at. And we are asking for an extension so that we can continue to be available to learn. And what we're also finding is that it takes time for this kind of awareness to surface, but also for the confidence to build that people can have these conversations and they don't need to wait for the experts to come in.
I like that. Yeah.
And that preparation for climate change and emergencies and all of that is really about building community connectedness and being willing to have brave conversations. So that all takes time, and we want to support that and keep walking alongside those who are taking those steps.
That's great. Really, the micro grants, I love the concept of the micro grants because it's so true. Oftentimes it does take that little bit more confidence just to take that first step, and then having the conversation, getting a group together. So, what you're offering people is the ability to have that safe space and to create something that's interesting for them to talk about, that's perhaps impactful beyond their home and their borders. So I think that's great. Just noted that Eric put a question in the chat about what the title of the book that was referenced. Yeah, that would be great, because I think maybe there's other people that might be interested in that too. Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, sorry, Susan.
Well, I just want to say that I'm going to have to leave this meeting a bit early. So I look forward to the form that you said that we'll be filling out as well.
And I can download that form in a PDF version, and then you can use it yourselves in any other kind of commentary. I think Marianne had a question, Susan.
So what community are you in, Susan?
Chibuktuk, Halifax.
Okay, but because I just wanted to know if there was anything that the Diocesan Environment Network can do in regards to, your efforts around climate change to support you. So
And vice versa. So yeah, maybe we can connect.
I think all your emails are when I don't like sending out emails where everybody's email address is in there, but in some cases it's important for you folks to be connected. So you might be able to find each other's email on marion.lucas.jeffries@gmail.com. So you'll probably see that on the email chain. So thank you for that, Susan, and thank you for connecting about the getting an extension. I know that happens, and you know a few of you on this call have asked for extensions or understood that things don't happen the way it necessarily was intended at the beginning, or it's a bit of a slow burn, as Susan said. I'm sure that it won't be long when everybody gets information about what they're doing, and all of a sudden she'll be oversubscribed. So thank you for that. I'm going to move on to Steph Hughes next, who's next on the on my visual here, and then we'll go on to the ones that don't have. Well, then we'll go to Justin, and then we'll go to the ones that don't have their cameras on.
Okay, super. Thanks, thanks, Penny. Hi, I'm Steph. I'm calling in from my home in Dartmouth. Our project that was funded through the grant is a gathering, and it hasn't happened yet. It's called the Atlantic Seed Gathering, and I'm super excited to be kind of in the throes of planning this thing. It's going to happen at the end of November, and it's a gathering for everyone in Nova Scotia and beyond who is kind of engaged in growing seed crops, adapting seed crops, doing plant breeding on their farms. And the reason they're a great fit for a climate change grant is because that work of seed and seed adaptation really sits at the foundation of how farms can become adaptable to changes that are happening due to climate change. And they're really a small number of, ecological growers who don't get a lot of attention from mainstream kind of agricultural support institutions. So in my professional work, I work with them, and this event is really an opportunity for them to come together and connect and share and learn from one another over 2 days in Tatamgush at the end of November. So we have about 25 folks registered so far, with commitments from another 5. And I think if I put in a few calls, we'll probably pretty easily get to 35 for this event. This hasn't happened for our community in Atlantic Canada since maybe 2015 or 2016. And then, of course, COVID happened. And so an in-person gathering is really long overdue. Some of the sessions that we have confirmed, I'm really excited about. We have a woman from Granville Ferry who is coming to talk about seed security in a time of climate chaos. So she's talking to some growers in her community and bringing images of like what the weather patterns over the last few years have been and what the impacts have been specifically on seed saving efforts. So how do you harvest seed and dry that seed down and not have, implications for your seed quality when, what is normally like a dry season is all of a sudden a very wet season, or when a wet area of your field suddenly has a drought. We have a woman from the North Shore coming to talk about our provincial efforts. We're working with a group of about 10 growers to restore the wild leek population in partnership with Acadia University. So they have been super passionate. They just did their seed harvest a couple of weeks ago. And that's long-term work because wild leeks are incredibly fussy about when and how they germinate. And so that's feeding into research that the seed bank at Acadia is doing to kind of figure out, how to support those incredibly finicky plants as we restore populations around the province. We have a woman coming from kind of Middleton area who does work. She does on-farm plant breeding, and she works specifically with really wide selections. So some people call those land races. And a land race is a plant population with a ton of diversity. And so land races are becoming popular in the agricultural and seed saving community because that diversity means that within that plant population, you have a lot of resilience. So some plants are going to be drought resistant, some are going to do well in water, some are going to be tall, some are going to be short. It's like a much wider sort of genetic base. And so she's going to talk to her fellow growers about what it means to make really wide plant selections when you're saving seeds and how that can be helpful.
That sounds
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, so that's a few of the sessions that we have confirmed, and yeah, I wish that we were I wish that I could tell you how it went, but we won't know for a couple months. But that's
Will
what we're working on.
Will you have a report that'll come out afterwards that maybe highlights the speakers? Is there any like is it on is it just in person or will it be recorded or?
We have made the very brave choice to make this strictly in person.
Yeah,
There is
that's
no
great.
virtual option, but we will. I'm trying to get a couple of volunteers online, so we will at least have some notes from each of those sessions, and I'm sure I could generate a summary or a report pretty easily if that's something you'd like to see and share.
Yeah, that would be. I'm sure there's people even here today that would be interested in the outcomes of the discussions, even if they can't make it themselves. But that's
For
great.
sure.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions for Steph? No? No? Okay. Let's move on to Justin. Hello, Justin. I see you there.
Hi, how are you?
Everybody's great, I think.
Good. Hello. I am coming to you live from Calgary. I'm actually on holiday right now, so it's so I am in a hotel lobby. So, anyways, but yeah, we had a phenomenal summer at Camp Tidnish. We had over 200 campers come through our doors this summer. So primarily, Camp Tidnish is associated with Easter Seals, Nova Scotia, and is our summer camp that specifically supports folks that are living with disabilities, whether that's physical disability and or intellectual disability, and all ages. So our youngest camper was 8 this summer, and our oldest camper was 73. And we had all ages throughout. And so we had some really cool projects that happened this year around climate change, specifically looking at supporting our campers that typically don't, a lot of our campers don't get to utilize the outdoors, let alone green spaces, and understand and talk about climate change. And so for a lot of campers, this was the first time that they had conversations about what they could do, not just at camp, but also bringing that back into their communities. So some of the projects we did was a harvesting garden. So campers, we modified planters so they could be wheelchair accessible, so that campers could at any stage be able to participate within. At the end of the summer, we actually donated some of our crop to the local Amherst Food Bank to kind of have that full circle moment. And so that was one of the larger projects that happened throughout the summer. We also partnered with MB Power and looked at conservation through electricity, electricity and water conservation within our building. So we replaced all of our shower heads and faucets and lighting, and upgraded our electricity. Some of our buildings actually went solar this summer, which is a side project. And not only did we do that at our camp, but we're right beside the community of Tidnish. So we actually then, because of the partnership with NB Power, actually had the materials and the supplies to actually support 30 households within that cottage community that typically, as we know, cottages age and aren't necessarily always the most greened spaces as we have. So we supported 30 additional cottages within Tidnish and helped them to actually change out their faucets and shower heads and things to be able to actually support greenifying their spaces too. And the campers actually led that. So a lot of campers went door to door and talked about climate change and what we were doing at camp, and wanted them to get involved, and we're giving out the packages that we had created there. And then there was so many other things. I mean, we started composting this year. That was like a big thing, not just to support our garden, but just in general to compost and actually support the camp itself. So whether that was reinvigorating our local landscape, like using that compost to help with some of the tree planting that we did this summer, some of the milkweed planting we did this summer. We had Parks Canada actually come a few times to talk specifically about monarch butterflies and about the importance of planting milkweed, especially within our area. And they actually brought out milkweed to plant along the coastline to encourage butterflies to actually be at camp and come, to bring that population back to our area. That's quite, to make it a little bit more robust. But yeah, those are just a few of the things we did this summer with our grant.
Amazing. Yeah, I can't even imagine what some of your campers have taken home with them, and just the experiences that they had and the opportunity to be in the field or get their hands dirty in dirt and things like that. Going door to door, like teaching others what they've newly learned is fantastic.
Yeah, and so I think the biggest thing that the grant helped us do was actually create a green job. And so one of our jobs specifically was an outdoor and environmentalist position at our camp that actually led the charge of the garden and the composting and the MV Power partnership and such. And so we had a full-time person that their background was environmental studies to come out and actually lead the charge on those climate conversations and such. And so it was really great this summer.
That's great. I'm just loving hearing all of this. You folks are, it's just so exciting. And I noticed in the chat that Steph also said that they have talked about accessing and sharing milkweed to support the monarch population too. So yeah, it's beautiful. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Justin? No, so we'll move on, and I'm going to go to the people that don't have their. Oh, there's Kelly. So let's go to Kelly. You'll speak about your other project that you applied for, because I know you applied for. You filled out the application for 2 projects, and Marion has already talked about one of them.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciated everyone's stories. I wanted to focus on some learnings of community care, moving at the speed of trust, that we really don't know community needs until we support the leadership within community. So ambitiously, working on the Eastern Shore also requires a type of community license, a very, very rural area. So in my work with Love Your Lakes, I focused on Lake Charlotte and Lake Echo. And I did a technical survey in August. And man, oh man, what a beautiful place we live in. I saw northern lights, shooting stars. I saw beavers and eagles. Oh man, it was just phenomenal. So this was contrasted with the previous year with, floods and fires. So it was just, yeah, I just wanted to speak that it was the Eastern Shore's got some magnificent lakes, and with the outreach that I was capable of doing, focusing in on other lakes in and around the Grand Lake watershed area, and even in Crystal's area in the Mersey Tobiatic South Shore, or I'm sorry, Southwest Nova biosphere, and really doing it in a creative, community care supported way is my lesson I wanted to focus on. And I did that with these custom lake pillows. So folks who love their lakes can enter to win a survey. And so my support or request for folks to do is to share this throughout your networks to support the idea of more stories, the better. The more books people share, the more residents who share their values and reasons why they're on a lake, the better feedback and knowledge mobilization we can create through this. So there's summary reports that go back to all the residents in the springtime, along with personalized recommendations of how they can be better stewards of their lake. So looking at the lake as an ecosystem, thinking about their role within that, and really garnering momentum to support stewardship organizations and management around that. So yeah, it's really an entry point into people's ways of thinking and ways of knowing, and helping to support their, actions of living shorelines, understanding what climate change impacts could have on their development or non-development. And really a lesson here is around visual permission too. So when we have bad practices, we're not only, harming our immediate area, but our neighbors can then see, wow, this is okay. Or even from a governance perspective, supporting connected efforts with local leaders to make sure that when we have municipal dollars, it, going into infrastructure that is should and could be more climate resilient, we're then giving local community an opportunity to build better, and to realize that, an immediate fix sometimes isn't the right way to do it. Yeah. I'll
That's
stop there.
great.
I shared the stuff in the chat. It's a copy paste kind of square image you can put on your media. David Hensby put it in his newsletter. But in terms of, yeah, where lake residents are, yeah, those full year lake residents are still there, but a lot of folks are, their second home is there, and they're no longer present. So yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you for that. Thanks, Kelly. Does anybody have any questions for Kelly before we push on? We haven't got too much time left, so I want to make sure we get I think there's 2 other people that haven't spoken yet. So anybody no? So I'm just going to move over to Apollonia. There you are. Hi. You're on mute. So there we
I
go.
am sorry about that.
That's all
How
right.
is it? Thanks so much for sharing, everyone. Yeah, I'm just I work for YouthNet, a community organization in the north end of Halifax, and with what we did this summer, we piloted a forest school for our camp participants. New project where we worked with a local forest school teacher and brought the kids to Point Pleasant. Sorry about that. We brought the kids to Point Pleasant every day. We ended up typically we work with ages 7 and up, but part of how we wanted to pilot this program is by engaging younger youth so that they're a little bit more flexible and open to the bush, I guess. And it went really well. It was super fun. And then the other part of this was kind of was the idea was to offer a forest school where they could learn, basic awareness in their local environment, and then down the line, this will kind of build into our more. We have a wilderness program, and our wilderness program invites teenagers and young kind of tweens to go camping for a couple nights or up to four nights, 5 days, and we do a canoe trip. We brought some participants in the backcountry of Puget for a week. That was really great, and we planned on having
Oh, we've lost your. Can't hear you very well. There we go. Oh, we've lost your voice. Maybe your microphone has changed.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So we planned on doing a 5-day hike Cape Genecto, but we had to kind of organize everything when a few of the timing just didn't work out for some of our community members. And instead we piloted a couple new partnerships that are really exciting. One with a mental health and well-being kind of animal farm called Ataraxy Farm, where we're going to be able to start offering our kids like horse grooming, mindfulness, and kind of animal compassion type of workshops. And then we also started working with the Deanery Project in the Valley, and we're going to be trying to offer them different kind of educational workshops. And so kind of just developing the right kinds of local partnerships to teach the kids skills that are kind of valuable in this changing world where we have to, you know, cultivate different kinds of relationships to are where we are and the beings around us. So the project went really well. We were really happy with the forest school, and it provides us a really good opportunity to, like I said, invite those younger kids down the line into these more challenging outdoor experiences, wilderness programs, and work with really exciting community members who are passionate about how to work towards solutions in innovative ways.
That's
so thank you
great.
so much.
Yes, well, thank you for that presentation, and I love hearing more about the how kids are spreading, you know, the word around, and you know, taking these learnings home with them is fantastic. So I love that. Does anybody have a question for Apollonia? No? Oh, no. That's great. Well, thank you. And
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. I think Dorothy is the last person who hasn't spoken. Am I correct on this? Yes, I think so. So, Dorothy.
So I have unstable internet, but I'll see what happens. So I'm with Richmond River Roots, and our project was mainly very boring compared to everyone else's, but we were looking at ways that we can become more self-sustaining as a market garden. So we had a pond, and we needed a pump that was capable of enough pressure to irrigate the market garden field, and that's worked out really well. We have 2 geothermal greenhouses that are in essence heated by the ground underneath them, and so they have sides that roll up, and we have automatic side roller uppers and downers so that it's more easy to adjust how much air you allow in the greenhouse depending on the wind and how hot it is, so people don't have to go running up and down. It's on the other side of the road, so it's actually quite far from the market garden itself, so that's helpful. And the other thing is a weather station. We won't actually benefit from it until next year, but it's a helpful way for us to understand better the influence of weather on how well we're growing crops. And like whoops,
We can hear you.
like those from Earthling Farm, we had drought, so the pond does keep filling, but it and it's quite a large one, but it went down to about half its normal capacity, and we have 2 dug wells, and they both went dry, so we had to have water imported. And I think each year we become more and more aware of what the climate impact is on how well you can grow. We have, like, over the past decade, the winds in this area have increased markedly, and the change between the temperature in the morning and the temperature late afternoon is really amazing, like 10 degrees centigrade easily. So, and I was really fascinated by Steph's project, which is looking at how do you get seeds that will actually grow things that'll adapt to all this stuff. And I think the other thing is that not directly related to the money we got, but we have regular tours of the area, our farm, and I think that's been really quite helpful in getting people to understand things like cover crops and how they help, or how the greenhouses work, or even to be more aware of what it actually takes to grow food. And the other is how much better it tastes than what you get in the grocery store. So that our grant was very helpful in just allowing us to keep on developing things so we can continue to be eco-friendly as we approach what we're doing. And we did get one of the micro grants that Maureen had talked about, and it was basically for an open house, which I think the main attraction was actually music. We had fiddlers and singers and guitarists and
Proper Kaylee.
yeah, and food. And the food was all plant-based and grown on the property. But we did have the warden there, and she talked a little bit about the need to address climate change. And we did have cards with information on how climate change affects health and food security. So thank you.
That's great, Dorothy. Thank you for that information. And I love the little bit of cross-pollination that's taking place. And certainly the experiences that you have faced, I know Earthling Farm has faced it too. And I love the conversations that are taking place, and even the upcoming seed conference, which all will talk about how the effect of climate change has affected the way future farming is, so and future ways of farming. So it's very very interesting to hear all of this. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Dorothy? No. Oh yeah, go ahead, Eric. Oh, you're on. There you go.
What is your next move for collecting water? You said you had 2 dug wells, but they went dry this year. And your pond was at half, but did your pond still hold you over? Or
sorry. So the pond is for the market garden, which is about an acre, and it didn't dry. It didn't totally dry, so we were still able to irrigate from the pond for the garden. But for the greenhouses, that was a different matter. They're supplied by the 2 wells. So in future, this is the big question, because Church Point, where we're located, has a reputation for very poor water. And the best water is actually from dug wells. But finding a site, like, we don't have any water diviners anymore. And so there's been a debate back and forth whether we should try for another dug well or a drilled well. The problem with the drilled well is, so it's a peninsula, and it's not a very big peninsula. So when you go down deep enough to get a good water supply, enough to irrigate, it's often quite salty or very hard. So in answer to your question, if you have a solution, I'd love to know it.
I mean, we have thought about drilling, but that's like $30,000. Perhaps we could get a grant through one of the federal agricultural grants that are out there.
The
They
local
would cover up
grant. There
Yep.
is a local infrastructure grant that opens Monday, October the 1st,
Okay.
because they will support wells.
Or because the bottoms of our ponds are mostly slate, so they don't hold water for very long. The water just goes through. So I looked at liners. They are a typical like conventional geotextile clay liner is, for the size of the pond we have, would be anywhere from like $6,000 or $7,000 just for the material. Plus to then install it would be, I don't know, probably another one or two. So say in the range of like 10,000 to get the liner installed, or 30 for the well drilled. We're on top of a mountain, so it's like 300 deep, but then depends how much you could get covered from grants. So yeah, it's an ongoing puzzle, figuring it out. But when it does rain a lot, it does hold in our site, but then and overflows out. So if we did have a way we could pump it into we have some other containment tanks here that we could potentially pump it into to have it for a time. So yeah, it's tricky. It's been dry this fall anyway.
Yeah, great conversation. Does anybody else have any other comments for Dorothy? So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the sharing and the learning that has taken place here today. It's fantastic. You're all connected via email, so if you have any questions, certainly throw it in the chain and we can see if anybody else can answer those questions. That would be fantastic. I will be sending out a Google form coming in the next little while for follow-up on your projects, and feel free. I know some of them are not taking place or they're pushed ahead. Don't worry about it. You can hold on to that Google form and fill it out when you can, and just pop me an email so that I know what's happening. So that's great. And thank you, everybody. Thank you. Nice seeing you in there, Megan, and nice seeing everybody today. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.